It is one of the most controversial bills in Congress, and these days that's saying a lot. After House passage earlier this month, it's now up to the Senate whether concealed carry reciprocity becomes the law of the land. If so, any state that lets licensed owners carry concealed guns like Massachusetts would also have to honor the concealed carry practices of any other state, including some that don't regulate the practice at all. Last week on Boston Public Radio, Police Commissioner Bill Evans said the bill just doesn't make public safety sense.
We get thousands of people killed in this country every day. The last thing we should be doing is making it easier for people to have access to guns. We should be tightening things up. Look at what happened in Las Vegas, Orlando, Sandy Hook. Tragedy after tragedy, and we get the idea that we're going to make it easier to get guns? How ridiculous is that?
It's an issue that's generating strong feelings on both sides. Joining me now are John Rosenthal, co-founder of Stop Handgun Violence, and Pierre Roberto Salomon, founder and CEO of SalomonFirearms Training. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Pierre, let me start with you. From your vantage point, why is concealed carry reciprocity a good idea?
I think it's a good idea because it's our Second Amendment right. So it's a right that's protected by the United States Constitution. And I think when people argue that, they imply there's this implied criminality that if you're a gun owner, then you're going to do something wrong. So it's actually a right versus a driver's license where you can drive in any state that you want and you don't even get a background check. So when someone owns a firearm, they go through a federal background check. So they're even more, you can say that they're a citizen who's of a higher repute because they haven't have any things in their background, like they don't have domestic violence, they don't have any felonies, they don't have any active open warrants on them or anything like that. So why is there an issue with someone who has a gun owner? Why shouldn't you be able to cross the line? Why do you live here in Massachusetts and you're a law-abiding citizen and then you cross the state line and all of a sudden that you're a felon? So I think it's wrong and it's immoral to put this implied criminality on law-abiding citizens.
John Rosenthal, do you think that the current status quo implies criminality on the part of people from other states?
Absolutely not. Look, I'm a gun owner too. Massachusetts has a background check for all gun sales. Police chiefs have discretion. We require training, licensing, and registration of firearms just like automobiles. Arguably, guns are even more inherently dangerous than automobiles. And we have the lowest gun death rate in the nation. What the NRA is trying to do is undermine our state gun laws so that anyone in a state that doesn't have permitting, licensing, or registration or safety training regulations could come to Massachusetts, bring their guns, and absolutely we will be less safe. And it's the NRA's, it's the big enchilada for the NRA.
Their top legislative priority,
the top
right,
legislative priority because Massachusetts and states like us, but we're the state with the lowest gun death rate. We are their worst nightmare. We have proven that gun laws work, and what he is advocating for is undermining gun laws, increasing gun violence, increasing fear, increasing gun sales so he can increase his own business of training people with guns.
Let's make sure that we are totally clear for viewers about what we're talking about, because I had to hear about this story a couple times before I think I grasped the fundamentals. Right now in Massachusetts, Pierre, do you have a concealed carry permit?
Yes, I do.
Okay, what did you need to do to get that concealed carry permit?
I needed to take a safety course, so Massachusetts requires that you take some form of a firearm safety course in order to apply for a license to carry. Depending on which city that you live in, they may have additional requirements. So some cities will require, like Boston, require you to do a live fire at Moon Island. Some cities will require you to have some letters of recommendation or write a letter why you feel like you need a firearm and stuff like that. So it varies per city, but on a minimum across the state, they require you to take a safety course before you can apply for a license to carry.
Okay, so you jump through all those hoops, and if I understand this correctly, and tell me if I don't, there are some states in the country, including, I was surprised to learn, New Hampshire, Vermont, Kansas, I believe, where if you're a gun owner, you can carry concealed without doing anything, right? You have your weapon, and you just have the latitude to carry.
Exactly right.
So someone from one of those states someone from Kansas could come to Massachusetts, and all they would have to adhere to would be the restrictions of their state, as opposed to the restrictions that you just described.
So
right?
Jared Loeffner went to a Walgreens or Walmart, passed a background check that he shouldn't have passed because he had a military record that should have prohibited him. No training, no licensing, just background check at a Walmart. He could then bring that gun, and he shot Gabby Giffords in the head and killed 6 more people. He could bring that gun legally to Massachusetts, and that is insane. when I have to undergo training and licensing and safety, sort of checks, what you're advocating for is states with no permitting requirements can bring their guns here, and that is a recipe for disaster.
Pierre, as a gun owner, would it give you any pause? I mean, the things that you described having to do before you got your concealed carry permit, did you feel like they were onerous here in Massachusetts, like it was asking too much of you?
I think Mass does some things right and some things bad. So I'm not opposed for people to getting some type of firearm training before they get their license to carry. So I won't argue against that. But everybody who has a firearm in this country, they go through a federal background check. So I think sometimes, I think sometimes people are upset with the government. If the government's background check is not unified and if it's not properly, then that's not an issue with the NRA. The NRA's goal is to educate and train people so that they have the knowledge, skills, and attitude to safely use firearms. So I think a lot of people, they have their gripes in the wrong direction.
That's just not true. There are 33 states that don't require a background check at all for private gun dealers to sell guns. And the NRA has opposed even prohibiting people on suspected terrorist watch lists who aren't allowed to fly in airplanes. You all are advocating that you should be able to continue to buy guns at gun stores, which is the only place where a background check is run. And you oppose background checks by private dealers, and 2/3 of all guns that are used in crimes in Massachusetts come from out-of-state states like Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont that don't require background checks at all. Do you support a background check for all gun sales?
Everybody supports a background.
No, they don't. The NRA doesn't.
Let me argue a few things. Okay, so first of all, you said that guns are more dangerous than cars. That's not true. More people in America die.
Can you conceal a car?
More people die from deaths from accidents in cars than they do by firearms.
That's not true either.
So one can argue. Yes, it does. You
No,
can
it
look
isn't.
at any stats. But so obviously more people die. You can look at that. So
Okay, and what else did you want to question about what John had just said to you?
I'm sorry, I actually did.
Well, John had said I think 33 states allow private gun dealers to sell guns without background checks.
Yeah, so you're talking about a law-abiding citizen who already has a concealed carry, who's already gone through a federal background check, and they may make a transfer to one another. So I'm not
Timothy
opposed.
McVeigh, who blew up the Murray building in Oklahoma, was a veteran, was a private gun dealer, and he sold guns without background checks. There was nothing law-abiding about him.
Is it possible that this bill, which as I understand it, increased the robustness of the national instant criminal background check for gun buyers? Would it, for example, by the way, did I get that wrong? I saw you give me a quizzical look. Maybe
I'm not
I got
sure
the
exactly
acronym
what
right.
you said.
Well, there was an amendment attached to the concealed carry reciprocity bill in the House, right, that would bolster the national instant criminal background check system. Right?
Yeah, it's a bit of a red herring. So the NRA...
Yeah, I'm wondering if you, because my understanding was that some gun control advocates like that development, as well as the NRA, and that it maybe could have snagged a Las Vegas shooter. But tell me what I'm getting wrong there.
So what the Trump administration, the NRA, pushed recently, and over 300 members of Congress supported it, was an Obama-era provision that said that people who were veterans and were under the custody of somebody else were taken off the list to be able to purchase firearms. And Trump and the NRA overturned that recently. So now people who have a history of mental illness can buy guns easier. And what
That's
now
not
is
true.
yes, it absolutely is true. So that now what they've added to this bill on concealed carry is improving the background check system, which is a great idea, but it ought to be a separate bill. Because there's no way you're going to find 60 votes to support this dangerous policy supported by the NRA on concealed carry.
Pierre, what was your objection to what John said?
He's trying to argue free will. You can't stop someone. If someone is a criminal, we're talking about law-abiding citizens. You mentioned people on the terror watch list. That's not even a due process, so anybody can be put on it without being notified. So you're talking about in America where you're supposed to be conceded innocent until proven guilty.
But if there's no background check, how do you know if somebody's innocent or guilty?
What are you talking about? If no one, everyone has a background check. You go through a federal argument.
Are you kidding? 33 states don't require background checks for gun sales from private dealers.
Is he wrong
for
about
people,
that, Pierre?
yes, he is. For people who are already licensed. So he's making it seem as if anybody who doesn't have a license can walk off the street and then go get and then go buy a gun. That's not true. You're talking about people who are licensed who are making a private transfer.
I'm sorry, Pierre, you don't know what you're talking about.
Yes, I do know what I'm talking about.
Private dealers can sell guns to anyone without an ID or a background check
That's
in
not
33
true.
states and
That's
thousands of gun shows.
That's absolutely not true.
You're
There's no
out-
such thing as a gun
Why do you-
show
what's the-
loophole.
There's
they
no
have-
such thing as a gun show
Absolutely.
loophole, really.
Have you ever been to a gun show
I
here in
have.
Mass?
I have.
And what do you see in the corner of the gun show?
I
You
see
people-
private individuals walking the aisle selling guns without an ID or a background check.
No,
and I have
they
brought
are.
reporters
Unfortunately,
there.
we are going to have to leave it there and urge our viewers to do some research to figure out what the actual truth is here. You've both given them a lot to work with. John Rosenthal, Pierre Roberto Solomon. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you for having us.